We're honored to have with us today former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. Prime Minister Olmert's premiership was one of Israel's busiest and some might say most volatile. In 2006, he decided to go to war against Hezbollah, a conflict that would bring Israel almost 13 years of unprecedented quiet along its northern front. In 2008, at the end of that year, he launched Operation Cast Lead against Hamas in Gaza, the first large-scale operation since the disengagement of 2005. And in between, he oversaw a slew of operations, including the bombing of a nuclear reactor in Syria, something I know a bit about, having written a book on that called Shadow Strike, as well as a number of other covert operations throughout the region. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Israel's former Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert. Thank you very much for joining us. It's on.
It's on? Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to come again.
I'd like to start with you with what's happening now with Iran, right? I mentioned how you oversaw and decided to attack the Syrian nuclear reactor back in 2007, a decision that was made even though the US president had said to you, I got it, I'll take care of it, but I'm not going to use military action. When you think back to the decision that you had to take, and you look at what's happening right now with Iran, can you walk us through what these considerations might be for an Israeli government?
Well, number one, I wasn't sure that I know about the atomic reactor until I read your book. So then I understood everything. So maybe I should wait until the next book about Iran will be written.
Well, first there needs to be an attack.
Be able to know. Not necessarily. I'm not certain that a military confrontation between Iran and America is to the best interest of Iran and for America. I'm not certain. I'm not certain that America really wants to get involved in such a military confrontation there. And I think that, we have to be a little bit more restrained in, at least in our expectations. I doubt that there will be a military confrontation. We have seen in the past that this is a very brilliant strategy that the US president has adopted. He stretches the atmosphere and the contacts to the point where he appears to be very threatening in order to convince the other side that it's better to sit down and negotiate. And I think that it happened with North Korea. The beginning was that he threatened that he will wipe out this bullet, as he called him, and it ended up with him being a friend of Kim Il-jong and meeting with him twice. And I think that he is hinting that he wants to sit down with the Iranians and negotiate with them. So I think that to the best of my understanding, I'm not familiar with the facts, I'm not privy to the intelligence information which is relevant on these days, so I am just as good as any other reader of the press or
But you know a little more about the Iranians than the average person.
I don't see what a military confrontation will do to prevent Iran. If Iran has plans of gaining nuclear power, which I'm not certain about, that they are engaged now in such an effort, and I don't know whether such a military confrontation will affect this. And I don't think that Iran has any interest of fighting with the United States of America. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. If America and Iran will be engaged in a military confrontation, I know who will win, and this will not be Iran. And I think that they know it very well.
So explain to us what you would do right now if you were prime minister with regards to the threat that is posed by Iran. You see what's happening in the Gulf, bombing the tankers, they're renewing enrichment of uranium.
Jack, first of all, you know, I'm thrilled and enthused at the idea that you want me to even consider myself being prime minister again.
We'll get to your political future in a bit.
Thank you very much. This is a great, you know, compliment that you give me. Look, I dealt with Iran. I'm almost certain that I told you what I did when I was prime minister with regard to Iran, you could have written an even more interesting book than the one that you just wrote about the atomic reactor. So there can be no mistake about it. We did many things that one day when it will be possible to expose this, it will fill the hearts of many Israelis and supporters of Israel with great pride.
People here promise me they won't say anything. People here promise me they won't say anything if you reveal it.
I have no doubt that if I'll say it here, it will be kept
a secret.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. It will not be circulated. So we dealt with Iran, and I think that the fact that Iran doesn't possess today, or didn't possess 2 or 3 years ago when President Obama signed the agreement with them, of any real nuclear weapon, is largely a result of what has been done quietly, decisively, courageously, first and foremost, by those who share the fears that we have. Okay? Now, I thought, and I still think, that there is a lot that can be done and should be done. What I am not certain about is that we have to talk about it every day. Why do we have to talk about it? What benefit does it make if we are making statements and you know, trying to get credit for something that can provoke the other side to do things that we don't want them to do? They know very well what we did in the past. Believe me, they know. Right. I mean, those who remained to be able to comment on it. Okay, they know very well. But did we say anything? Did we make any statement? Did we make any public threat? Did we wake up every morning and say, we will destroy our enemies, we can destroy them, we can do this and that? My strategy was different. I can only say this, you know, and this this is a secret. I mean, devastating. At the year 2003, I was a member of a select committee of ministers at the cabinet of Sharon, the then prime minister. I was his vice prime minister, 2003, 2004, and we used to have all regular briefings with the heads of Mossad, of the intelligence, of the Atomic Energy Committee, and whoever, reporting to us about the efforts that Iran is doing to possess nuclear weapons. The common wisdom at that time and the assessment, the official assessment, was that by the year 2008, they are most likely to have an atomic bomb. Definitely in 2009, they will have atomic weapons. Now we are in the middle of 2019, and they still don't have it. And in most of the time, they didn't have it, not because they didn't want to have it, but because there were all kinds of things which were done quietly to prevent them. And therefore, when you ask me what would I do, I say, let's not kid ourselves. No one wants a war. No one wants to engage himself, his country, in a military confrontation with Iran, and there are much more effective ways in which the Iranian efforts to achieve nuclear capacity can be done.
But there is only one country in the world that has not once but twice used military action to destroy a nuclear reactor. First in 1981, Menachem Begin, the Osirak reactor, and second one in 2007, you with the Syrian reactor. You reinforced and instituted what has become known as the Begin Doctrine, the fact that Israel will not allow a country that's an enemy to obtain a nuclear weapon. So if it comes to it, that Iran is to get the bomb, can Israel do it?
Iran will not have a bomb. Trust me. Okay? I think that this is as much as an Israeli of some position, and although I am not in any official position, but considering the fact that I was prime minister and I dealt with Iran and I dealt with atomic and nuclear threats to the state of Israel, I think that what I say will be heard and will be listened to and will be analyzed. So I have to be careful in how I define it. Therefore, I want to say, I am absolutely certain that if Israel and America and others will take the necessary effective measures, Iran will not possess nuclear power. However, I'm not certain that a direct military confrontation is the solution to this threat.
Let's shift gears for a moment. You were the last Israeli prime minister to come, I guess, we could say close to a deal with the Palestinians. Back in late 2008, early 2009, you made an offer to President Abbas, which he walked away from. And now I don't know if you heard Jason Greenblatt earlier today, but they're talking about rolling out what they refer to as the deal of the century, although we'll wait to see if that deal will ever be rolled out. Is it in your opinion that peace is even possible anymore? Mahmoud Abbas is old, has rejected every offer until now. Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't seem like he's really itching to make a deal.
Jack, when I was first elected to the Knesset, I was the youngest member of Knesset, over 45 years ago. Now, I'm much older, so now I have a different perspective. Don't think that old people are not capable of doing historic things, okay? So, no, I don't talk about me now. Don't be so happy. I want to say this. Without referring to a specific name, I can tell you that the guys that are in charge of the most sensitive security matters in Israel, who by definition, considering their position, are on a daily contact with the Palestinian Authority, when they talk to me, they say that within 2 weeks, they would have reached an agreement with Abu Mazen, not with someone else, with Abu Mazen, with Mahmoud Abbas. But it has to be clear. Such an agreement will have to be more or less the peace plan that I have proposed, which is unacceptable to the present Israeli government. So the question is what Israel wants. What Israel wants. There can be agreement on a basis which the present government is not willing to negotiate. What is the alternative? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the deal of a century. I don't know the details of it. I just, I kept hearing all the time that there is a deal of a century. I want just to suggest that it will be remembered that the deal of the century has to be between Israel and the Palestinians, not between Israel and America. We have already the deal of a century with America. But when one talks about the deal of a century to the Middle East, it has to be between Israel and the Palestinians. So I am not familiar with the...
But are you concerned with the talk of annexation? Is that something that concerns you?
I don't think that it's useful, and I don't think that it can be productive to the desire to achieve peace. If there are many Israelis, I can't ignore it, that I'm absolutely certain that territories should be annexed. Let me tell you this. If I will now run a vote here in this crowd, do they want to have the Palestinian refugee camp in Shuafat as part of the state of Israel? I'm not certain that the majority will support it. Why do we need it? Why do we need to add to Jerusalem 300,000 Palestinians that will become the majority in the city of Jerusalem, and one day will vote a mayor, an Arab mayor for the city of Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel? Is this what we want? Is this what we need? So how can the refugee camp in Shuafat and Jabal Mukaber and Abu Dis and all of these neighborhoods which have no Jew in them should be part of the capital of Israel? Why do we need them? They are not part of the history of Jerusalem. They are not part of any territory that we have been praying for and yearning for all our lives. Why do we need them? So, in other words, we have to try and think in a somewhat different way in order to achieve our national goals. And I'm not certain that I know what Mr. Greenblatt offers and the President offers. I'm not unhappy with the fact that they are engaged in this. Look, I don't know the President, so I don't even pretend to say that I'm familiar with the President, that I know the guy, I know what he thinks, how he operates, and so on. However, I know one thing, and you will all agree with me, that he is exceptionally sensitive not to appear failing in anything that he does. Maybe more than most other political persons we have come to know over the years. So if he calls a peace plan the deal of a century, then at least he thinks that there is a good chance that it will succeed. Otherwise, he will not propose a peace plan named after him that is going to fail almost from the beginning. However, for this peace plan to be successful, it has to be at least a little bit appealing also to the other side, because again, the peace that will have to be signed will have to be signed between Israel and the Palestinians, not between Israel and America. So my guess is that if the President is as dedicated to this as I think he is, he will propose something that will be equally uncomfortable to Israel and the Palestinians, so that it will bring them together to the table of negotiations. We'll see.
We will see. I want to move to the elephant in the room for a moment, and that's Israel's repeat do-over elections. Is there any chance that you will consider throwing your hat into the ring and running again? I mean, we're hearing a lot of comebacks. Ehud Barak might be coming back. Tzipi Livni might be coming. You could get the whole game back together.
How many Ehuds do you want to have in one election? I'll tell you something. This is a great idea. And maybe many people would love it, because I think that if they will have to choose who is the Ehud that they prefer, I'm not certain, I don't know, but I'm not certain that they will prefer the one that has declared already. But I think that, I will look at the political process from the advantageous position of an outsider for the time being. I don't say that I will not come back. I just say that these coming elections will probably be with the participation of another Ehud, and I'm not sure that that will make a difference.
So emphasis on for the time being. Emphasis on for the time being. For the time being. You said for the time being.
Yes, I said for the time being. Because in my young age, you know, everything is possible.
And I have to ask you, you said recently, I think it was last week, that the Netanyahu family is a family engaged in crime. Do you still stand by that?
No, I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something.
Shh.
The Netanyahu family likes every now and then to talk about my family. I'm not going to give them the pleasure of doing the same. When I am overseas, I will not talk about the Prime Minister and certainly not about his family. I think his family is his problem, not mine.
A very diplomatic answer, but I do have to ask you, when you were facing criminal investigations, you stepped down before an indictment. This Prime Minister has already a decision to indict him, and he's holding on to his chair.
This is not the only difference between the two of us. I mean, why do you have to pick this up? There are many differences. We are different people. We have different personalities. We have a different style. He is certainly a very successful person. I mean, if you measure it by any common standards, he's been Prime Minister for a long time. And he behaves in a different way. I thought that what he suggested at the time that I was Prime Minister, that the Prime Minister should not be involved in running the country when he's under investigation, was a sound and legitimate position. Let's leave it like this.
Ehud Olmert, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.